Hi prop fans, Scarecrow here with Han Solo's blaster from Star Wars A New Hope. This is going to be the detailed in-depth look. If you'd like just a brief overview of what it does, the lights and sounds, etc., I'll post a link to that shorter video below, but I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. For those of you that are familiar with the props that they used in the movies, there were two. He had the hero prop, which has a bull barrel on it, some different greeblies, this and that. And then there was a Greedo killer, the one that shot first early on in the movie. And this is obviously a representation of that. And this is built on a steel Mauser replica. It's non-firing. It's made by Fieldmarshal, War Machine paintball. No, it is not a paintball gun. It is, like I said, just a steel non-functioning replica. It has a functioning trigger on it, hammer, bolt, and safety. A lot of details on this one. It's really nice representation of a C96 broom handle, and it's got replica parts on it. Most of them are from Fieldmarshal as well. The scope, flash hider, the mount, the heatsink is from Solo's Hold, and this one does have the upgraded walnut grips on it. That of course had to be finished. And give you an idea, there we go. It's really nice. It's got some incredible weight to it, way more than you would think. Now as far as accuracy goes on this one, it's not 100%. Obviously because one, replica parts, not real world parts, and two, the screen prop was based on a replica from a company called Model Gun Company out of Japan, which is actually less accurate to a real Mauser than this one. This one is much closer to a live fire that was used for the hero prop, but still, this is a nice upgrade. And plus, the MGC has a different trigger profile and also has plastic grips. Like I said, this one's much closer. It's got the walnut grips on it, much better feel. It's really a nice replica. And like most of the things I build, this one does have electronics in it, and it took a lot of work to get the electronics hidden and to make it function the way I wanted to, things like that. It does have a non-functioning scope on it, but you can see through it. Go ahead and tell you some of the things that went into making this prop. He does a few things to make electronics easier. He gives you some areas that you can put switches in this assembly, and he does drill a hole here for a wire passage into the front. Other than that, you kind of have to do your own thing. Like the switches have to go in their own position. You're going to have to drill your own holes for it, do some work. I actually had to do a ton of work on this section in here. You see it in the back. There we go. All of this entire trigger hammer assembly needed a lot of filing, a lot of work to get the trigger to function the way that I wanted to, because basically what happened was you pull the hammer back, it's in a different position, opens the circuit, can't use it. So I had to change the profile of this. I had to change the profile of the trigger catch, etc. This isn't just a spring-loaded trigger. And plus there was a good bit of slop in the trigger, lateral, this and that. Just when I first built it, you could just flop it around and the trigger would go anywhere it wanted to go. And I didn't like that at all. I wanted to have a good feel on it, good pull. I did upgrade a lot of the springs on these, almost all of them. He had some upgraded springs that I got from him, and then I did a few things, like the spring on here was loose, so I ended up tightening that up so it wouldn't flop around. The let's see, trigger spring I got from him. Also, he's got a better spring for the bolt now, so it's got more of a pull on it. And there we go. And like I said, this one does have the functioning safety, hammer, trigger, sights. Makes it really nice. Also gives you a lot of options with what you want to do with the electronics inside. So, I mean, the first thing that goes into this is you do have to blue it. And I cold blued everything. I didn't do any heat bluing on this at all. to make it closer to the MGC, which is just all black. I wanted to try to get as close to that as possible. It does come stock with plastic grips, but these were upgraded at the customer's request to wood, and I'm glad. It's got a better feel. Yes, it's less accurate to the movie, but it looks better. It's got a better feel, like I said. Really adds something to the overall prop. Just makes it feel a little more realistic. And this does have electronics in it as well. I used a Blaster Core version 5 from Plecter Labs, and I have all the electronics hidden in here. Let's see, I've got the recharge port, the SD card access, and the battery in here. Back here I just have a switch tucked away in the handle, and then I have the speaker, of course. I did have to open this up to allow for sound venting, and I put a power switch here. A lot of times what you'll see people do is put a large recharge port with a plug that turns power off. I didn't like that. I thought it took away from the look of it way too much. So I put a very discreet power switch right there. So when you want to turn it on, you don't have to open anything up. All you have to do is that, turn it off and on. Even with gloves on, it doesn't pose a problem for me. Let's see. And like I said, I had to do a lot of work to the hammer mechanism to make it where it wasn't constantly firing when the hammer was pulled back, little things like that. The safety, I put a small momentary switch in here as opposed to a lever action switch. Lever action switch would have made it where you have to push up to activate it. What I did was make it where you just pull down, and there's a little click, you can feel it, and that's your momentary switch. So that's your auxiliary here. I also put a lever action switch in the bolt so that if you want to reload the weapon, you can do that. It's hooked to the clip in, clip out. So I really like that. It makes functioning a heck of a lot easier, and the fact that everything functions on it. So also I changed the sound font on this a little bit. I added some movie quotes to it. A few of the blaster sounds I added quotes afterwards or before, things like that. And I also put the entire scene on a track, so if you ever wanted to, you could just turn it on and have that scene playing in the back. So like I said, turning it on is just that switch. And then in the barrel there are 7 LEDs. And then if you want to switch to a stun mode, so you can do that. And this does have different fonts on it which emulate different blasters and live fire weapons as well. But you can just and whenever you're empty like that, all you have to do is slide back on the bolt.
My dead body.
So, like I said, a lot of work went into this. I did have Fieldmarshal drill out the barrel for me because I simply didn't have the equipment to do it. It takes an extremely long bit, and to keep that perfectly straight in there would have been very difficult. Everything, like I said, does come raw, so of course everything had to be blued. The grips have to be finished. I had to open up the sound venting here, had to do modifications on all of this to get the assembly to work like I wanted to take the slop out of the trigger. Also on this slide, or excuse me, on the safety, once this is put together, it just kind of wanted to flop around, so I added some magnets to it so it won't flop around. But I didn't want to go too strong because that's your auxiliary button, and so everything can just be done
My dead body.
with that. There's no opening anything up or trying to press the trigger and then a button back here or anything, such as if you want to change sound fonts.
My dead body.
you can also reload with this as well if you want to. So, like I said, you've got the bolt for reloading. You can also reload with the auxiliary button, things like that. Whenever you want to recharge it, this cover is removable here. Just push of a button, slide this forward, and you've got access to your SD card, and you have access to your recharge port as well. You just pull it out, charge it up. It's got a 7.4 volt battery pack in there, and like I said, went through a lot of trouble to keep everything hidden. I wanted this to look as true as possible, just sitting on a shelf, but then to still have function. The biggest tell, aside from those LEDs in the barrel, is this on-off switch. But like I said, I like that a lot more than I do the recharge port with the large kill plug on it. And I do love the switch placement on this. And it's very loud. I had to create a resonance chamber inside these grips, and then I routed it out for a 28mm bass speaker from a company called Saber Essentials. It's actually more of a full range speaker than a bass. It sounds really good. It's really loud. Even right now I'm running it at 75% volume instead of 100%. That's a little easier on the speaker, and there are times these props can actually get too loud. But like I said, everything on here, we've got the replica flash hider from Fieldmarshal, replica scope and mount from Fieldmarshal, the replica heatsink from Solo's Hold. Like I said, had a better fit. Took a while to find the paint for this. I ended up going with a gray textured paint. I was trying to duplicate the Parkerized finish, which does have a little more green in it than this one does, but I wanted the texture, because if you've ever seen Parkerized finishes in person, they're typically kind of open textured, a little bit porous. So I tried to duplicate that as best as I could, and there are tons of little details. Having to go and get the wires through here, there wasn't a direct way to put them into this section, so it had to get wrapped around and then pulled through the bottom, then hiding the switch here, mounting the trigger switch, and making all the adjustments to where it actually fell properly with the hammer back, and then changing over the auxiliary switch to a momentary push button as opposed to a lever switch. Really a lot more work than it even seems. This was probably, honestly, I probably got more time invested in this than anything else. There was a lot of research and development trying to figure this out, trying to work with the constraints of the prop, the constraints of the board, little things that I couldn't get away from, such as pulling the hammer back does open the trigger. That's why I made this as a reload. So you can see what I'm talking about. See, that does open the circuit. There was nothing I could do about that because the hammer isn't just spring loaded. It actually works on a cantilever system. So like I said, you're actually closing that circuit when you pull it back because of the way it's rounded. But you have to file it down, otherwise it keeps it open with the hammer back, so it would just keep firing, and it wouldn't fire when you pulled the trigger like that. So again, non-functioning scope, but you can see through it. I had to remove some of the extra threading on the inside of these windage knobs because that was visible. Obviously I didn't want that. But yeah, a lot of work in this one. But I think I've covered just about everything on this. If not, if you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask. But with that, I'm going to call it good, and I appreciate you watching, and thanks a lot. Make the force be with you.